Good afternoon, and welcome to a special podcasting event. Today, we are proud to present a very special program where we'll be discussing a number of issues, both timely and timeless, with a pillar of the Jasper and Evansville communities of Indiana. I am referring, of course, to Father Raymond Brenner, or simply Father Ray, as he is widely known. Father Ray is revered locally and in religious circles alike as a champion of the human spirit. His undying devotion to God's message has led to an enriching life of faith and love. Father Ray is a man of the people and has been featured, incidentally, many times in the online media and physical press as the subject of a number of news stories as recently as the end of last year. His efforts have yielded great strides for a number of his favorite charities and his community in general. His name has appeared, as I mentioned a moment ago, on countless news websites, including some of the major news network affiliates throughout the country. That's to say ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC, and many more. But it goes without saying that I am honored to be interviewing this man today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Father Raymond Brenner of Evansville, Indiana. Welcome to the show today, Father Ray.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you very much.
Well, it's great to have you here. I should say welcome to your show, as it is your program. Nevertheless, it is wonderful to be a part of the experience at all. It's worth noting to our listeners as well, Father Ray, that Father Ray just recently retired. I want to point that out. And this is after a very lengthy and esteemed position at St. Joseph Catholic Church of Jasper, Indiana. About 2 months now, not even. It's just shy of 2 months since he retired, about a month and a half, I would say. And we're going to get into that and more as we progress through the program. But first, we're going to go back to the beginning, the very beginning, and start there. So, did you know, Father Ray, when you were young, when you were a child, that yours was to be a life of faith and devotion to the Lord? In other words, did you receive a clear calling? Explain to us a little how this journey of faith began for you.
Well, first of all, my parents were very strong believers in God and in the church. I was born with a diuretic stomach, so I lived the first 18 months of my life on buttermilk and bananas. Really should not have survived, but due to a country doctor who kind of knew his business as far as what to give me, that was my diet for the first 8 years of my life. So I had a lot of people praying for me,
yes.
Relatives, neighbors, groups of sisters and priests, and all of that. Then at I started 4 days in the first grade and then came down with polio. And so, again, a lot of prayers. We were quarantined, had a quarantine sign on the post of the porch so that nobody was allowed to come in and visit, although my two brothers and my sister were allowed to go to school, but they were not allowed to come into my room because at that time, that was 1949, there was very little known about polio, right, whether it was contagious or not. And so, the prayers continued. And the fact that I survived the polio, again, a lot of people kind of put that idea in my head that I was being spared for something special for God.
Of course.
And so, that prompted a lot of thinking in that way, but it still meant a long way to go in order to accomplish that.
Okay. And throughout this period, did you begin to feel a natural inclination towards generosity and charity, or did that come when you were a little bit older?
Well, my parents were very generous. I mean, we lived on a farm. We didn't have a lot of money, and in fact, when I was born, my father was working in Evansville, but his father-in-law asked him to quit his job there and to take over the farm, which was 160 acres at that time. And so, you know, they were constantly giving things, produce from the garden away. The Little Sisters of the Poor were in Evansville at that time, and they had chickens. They raised chickens in town, and so they would come around with a pickup truck, and he would come back to the corn crib and scoop in however much corn they thought they might need for some days. And also, I don't remember what it stood for, but it was called Crop Project. They would come around with a wagon or truck and you know, just load out some corn from the corn bin. And so my parents were just, you know, constantly giving away produce. My dad had an egg route for a number of years, and as we moved away, kids moved away. They raised as much garden. It's just that they had a lot more to give away to, like, the egg customers, because a lot of them were widows and widowers. So they were always very generous. Right. I mean, they gave to the church and supported other activities as well.
Well, charity and generosity, giving in general, it really does play a very central role in your life, and has for a very long time, clearly. If you wouldn't mind, please tell me about some of the groups that you currently support, or that you've supported in recent years, some of your favorite charities.
Well, you know, it's like sometimes I think people in general need some incentive for giving. And sometimes it involves, you know, a particular instance in their own life, a family member or whatever. And when my previous assignment was at Resurrection before I went to St. Joe Jasper, and we had Brock Hurdle, who went to St. Jude's, and you know, they worked with him, and for a while they had his cancer in arrest, but then it eventually came back. The Benedictines and Franciscans were particular, you know, I was kind to them too, because Mom had, my dad's oldest sister was a daughter of charity. So, you know, we spent a lot of time with her, but also Mom had some cousins who were Benedictine and Franciscan sisters. So we would go to Oldenburg at least once a year to visit them. Right. Children from the area go to Riley Hospital in Indianapolis. So that's a particular charity. St. Meinrad, I spent 12 years there, because when I went there, they had a high school, college, 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, 4 years of theology. So I'm what they call a lifer there, because I spent that much time in schooling there. Right. I worked with the Sisters of Providence in my first assignment, which was in St. John's Lagodi. And so they were teaching in the school there. And then all of my brothers and my sister spent some time at Mater Dei High School. Right. So that's one of the Catholic high schools in our territory. So those are my connections with those basic charities, you know, that I support.
Right. Well, you've certainly never shied away from promoting yourself as a vehicle to advance these organizations, putting yourself as the center of things, be it an event, fundraisers, things like that, press releases, news articles, things of that nature, to encourage people to donate to these causes. But you mentioned a moment ago that sometimes people do require a little bit of a push. What would you say is the most effective way to inspire charitable activity in people who are otherwise not generally of that persuasion?